Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Cash Now Fundraising Strategies During Crisis. This is actually part of a broader series, Planning Through Crisis webinar that Strategy Solutions is putting on. So we're happy to have all of you here with us today. This is Jackie Catcherbone. I am the Director of Community and Nonprofit Services for Strategy Solutions. And I'm just here to welcome you and help moderate things through our discussion today. Your presenter today is actually Margie Taylor. She's got extensive fundraising and resource development experience, and she's here to help offer some guidance during this challenging time and hopefully answer any questions that you have. So we are going to keep all participants muted throughout this webinar. If you happen to have any questions that come up, please feel free to use the chat feature for them, or we do have contact information at the end. If there's any specific questions you want to shoot to Margie, we can definitely respond to them that way as well. So as I mentioned, this is a series of webinars that have been offered. If you are curious for the rest of the schedule and you didn't already receive it, let us know. Again, contact information is at the end. We'll be happy to provide you with the link to register for those. And if you happen to miss any, we'll make sure that you have access to the recorded webinars as well. So as I mentioned before, this is a series. The president of our company, Deb Thompson, as well as Margie, who you'll be hearing from today, and John have been offering several of these trainings just to get information, support, guidance out to organizations. And then we also, which I'll mention again towards the end, are happy to offer 30-minute free consultative services that this team or any other members of our team are happy to meet with you at a time that works and just kind of talk through what you may be experiencing. It'd be a sounding board for you. But again, we're trying to make our experienced leaders available and accessible to all of you. So with that, I will turn it over to Margie and let her introduce herself.
Thank you very much, Jackie, and good morning. I wanted to indicate that our webinar today assumes that you are assessing your entire program, and we will focus on how donors, prospects, and financial groups will help to provide access to income for your nonprofit. There is a great deal of information about federal programs. There are many sites that you can go to access information on those federal programs, particularly your community foundations and your statewide nonprofit associations. The federal programs are massive. They will take time to implement. The SBA during Hurricane Katrina and others had a 70 to 100-day average turnaround time. And that's why I want to focus on your donors and your community today to determine if there are ways that you can access resources locally while you still apply to these federal programs if you do. Our world has changed. This particular quote I pulled from the Stanford University. Our economy is in bad shape and will only get worse, so what can we fundraisers do to minimize the impact of this difficult period on our organizations, at the same time maximize our income? That quote actually came in the spring of 2009, the time of the Great Recession. The author is Max Warwick, and the title was Fundraising in Tough Times. Certainly that recession was different, but it was difficult for the time we were in. We are in a much different situation, but a difficult situation nonetheless. During my 30-year career, I've experienced 9/11, the 2007-2009 recession, organizations closing, national, international scandals. Probably the closest that I've seen to this is 9/11. It was global, unprecedented, unanticipated, and horrific, and we were frightened. What was going to happen next? We didn't know, but there are lessons that we learned from that and other crises in the past 30 to 40 years. And in the next slide, you'll see in a crisis, the tendency is to do everything but raise money. We are in a crisis mode. We are looking for ways to save our organizations, to respond, but I encourage you to continue to focus on your donors and strengthening and building those relationships. When 9/11 hit, I was working in South Central Pennsylvania near Gettysburg, and we were cognizant of something happening in New York City, and were told that a plane was heading to the Pentagon or the White House. And of course, that plane didn't get there, but the devastation of that day was absolutely horrific. A number of days later, I was working for a university. A number of days later, Central Development, the vice president and associate vice presidents did a conference call with us. And I remember very well their advice. They said, stay calm, work with your chancellor, your board of directors, your advisors on the plan. Develop from that plan your talking points that you will share with donors and your volunteers. And then marshal your volunteers and your staff to contact and call your donors and the organizations that support you and share what you're going to do. So that's what we're going to look at in step one. In step one, call your board members, your donors, your influencers, those who can strengthen you and your case for support. Pick up the phone. Talk to your donor. We are lonely. We are sheltering in place. Many states, and I'm in one of them in North Carolina, which we have stay-at-home orders. Listen to your donors. Listen attentively for ways that you can help. They may have a question about something that you have information on that you could be able to email them. Share your situation at the same time, how you're serving your clients, how you're adopting new technologies, what you are doing, not what you can't do. Share a success story. Let me give you an example. My favorite PBS station is now broadcasting from the county executive, her daily report on what's happening in the county and what steps the county is taking. That PBS station is then sharing that information with every other broadcast media in the region so that the county executives' messages are getting out to multiple audiences. That's one of the success stories that this station is able to share with its donors. You need to think about how your group is helping and responding to this, and pick one or two stories. And part of that is emphasizing your resilience, your commitment to making it through this situation. Share whatever next steps you have and ask them for their assistance. And then we'll go to the next one. Stick with what works. That was one of the lessons we learned in 9/11, during the Great Depression, during scandals. If you have a solicitation in progress, call the donor, talk to the donor, as we said in step one. And if it's appropriate, and you will know, ask the donor if she or he wants to proceed with the solicitation. Not that you have to do it, but keep that in the back of your mind. And if the donor wants to conclude, postpone, or schedule a follow-up call. If the donor says yes, they want to conclude and continue to make this gift, the solicitation, thank them for the gift, and determine the next steps, how the gift will be made. If the donor cannot commit at this time, ask about other ways that she can help you, your nonprofit. Are there phone calls? Are there information? Are there donor-to-donor calls that this donor could make on your behalf? If the donor says, no, I can't do it at this time, thank this donor and ask about other ways he or she can be helpful as well. Ask about the opportunity to revisit this in 6 months, 9 months, to continue with their ability to support once they know where they stand as well. Another part of step 2 is repurpose existing donor gifts. Call to propose to your donor to remove or lessen restrictions. If you have a gift for a new piece of equipment, you're not going to need that. Perhaps you don't need that equipment. So call the donor and ask that this be done. Donors are being very flexible now, as well as foundations and corporations, in terms of gifts, funds that you have already received for gifts. I would document this via email to the donor, to your board chair, perhaps to your legal counsel as well, and getting permission to get this done. Another part of step 2 then is to look at private, public, and community foundations. You know, community foundations and others are developing rapid response funds. These funds are your local lifeline, in my opinion. The federal grants that are coming out, the federal loans that are coming out, again, there's a great deal of work that needs to be done in order for the SBA and others to implement those, to get those dollars out to you. The rapid response funds can have a 5-day, a 10-day, a 48-hour delivery to your nonprofit organizations. So I strongly encourage you to contact the Rapid Response Fund administrator, community foundation, another foundation in your region, and get on their radar. Grants that are not now relevant, again, ask to use them for your current needs and document that. Advocate to your foundations to release more than 5% distribution. This is what's going to create liquidity in your community. And you may know the foundation founder, private foundations. This is not unusual for them to do this. They did this in 9/11. They did this during the recession. It is perhaps even more critical that they do this now. So that's another part of step 2 that you could take with private foundations. And a state gift, again, this is after you have your conversation or has you with information. You've talked to the donor, you know where he or she is. Not this week, perhaps not the next week, but very soon you may be able to talk to them about early activating the estate commitment. And what this means is once the donor knows where she is in terms of her own financial viability, is there an opportunity to make a gift, $1,000, $5,000, $10,000, to continue to achieve what they want to achieve through their estate giving? And we call that early activation of the estate commitment. Donor advised funds. I strongly encourage you to call donors with donor advised funds and encourage them to continue that your organization be recommended to receive these funds. You are in a very competitive situation, and many, many organizations, including rapid release funds, rapid response funds, will be looking to major donors, to wealthy donors, to support the rapid relief funds. Your organization, your nonprofit, may not fit the criteria of these rapid release funds, may not appear to fit these criteria. So I would strongly encourage you to call your donors with DAFs and let them know that how you are serving clients in your region, your community, in terms of COVID-19. And if they don't answer, leave a message and then follow up with an email. Again, stick with what works. One of the next parts of sticking with what works is to look at pledge payments. Discuss and use the likelihood of a timeline. If I have a pledge payment due in April, am I going to make that pledge payment? No. Call me and again, first inquire, talk to me about what you're doing with your organization, and thank the donor for the pledge that he or she has made, the support that he or she has given to you. If it seems appropriate, talk to that person about the pledge and the likelihood of establishing a new timeline. Can we talk about this pledge again in June or July? Let me call you. Let me check with you in September. If it's possible, if they're receptive, can they accelerate payments? If a payment is due in 2020, 2021, 2022, is there a possibility of accelerating that payment at all? And let the donor tell you, no, there's not a possibility at all of doing this. In fact, I want to defer my payment. All right, so they want to defer the payment. Can we review your situation in September, October, and November? One of the reasons I suggest this is I have read that tax laws are changing in terms of charitable contributions effective for this year. Now, again, you need to check with your legal counsel on this, but let me ask that you don't not ask or not address this possibility. Could your donor make partial payments? If they want to defer the entire pledge or cancel the pledge, can they do partial payments as part of this pledge? The next step in sticking what works is look at tactics that we have used, the charitable IRA rollover. Your donors who have done charitable IRA rollover gifts, check in with them, see how they're doing. These are people who are 70 and a half and older. They are my cohort. Many of them are isolated, or as my state is and many other states are, isolated in-house. Do not travel orders except for essentials. They want to talk to somebody. If my charity, if my favorite public broadcasting station had called me last week, I would have been thrilled. My YMCA called last week and did not discuss gifts at that point, but just checked in to see how we were. Financing. If you have financing existing loans with a local bank or a local credit union, determine, call, and ask for lower interest rates, moratorium on payments, and longer terms. Yes, the SBA is doing this, but if you're looking or have existing loans, consider calling your banks. Review assets as collateral. Again, the assets that you have can serve as collateral for bank loans, but this will need approval and consultation with your legal and board review and approvals. Will a donor consider a loan? I've seen some reference to this. I've never had experience with a donor providing a loan for the organization, but there may be benefits to a donor providing a loan with the comparable terms, conditions of the SBA, which are very favorable. That would require legal counsel, tax advice for the donor, for your organization as well. But I would suggest you consider something like that and put that out there for presentation. Another part of what we're talking about is assets, looking at your assets and of course your virtual events. I put in here Persian rugs. The first institution I worked for was a college that the Board of Trustees had voted to close about 1978. And the alumni and faculty took the board to court. And in 1979, the Common Pleas Court ruled that the Board of Trustees had missed several steps in closing this college. And the judge found for the plaintiffs, the faculty, and the alumni. And they found themselves in a position with having to continue this college and raising more than $1 million a year minimum to continue operations. One of the presidents who came in to the institution looked at the assets that we had. And one of the assets was the very valuable set of Oriental rugs that were probably brought into the States in the early 1900s. Those rugs that we were walking on were worthy of selling at Christie's. That is an unusual asset. It's probably not evident here, but take a look at the assets that you have. And if there's anything that would provide some cash for your organization. Virtual events, annual appeals, as you know, encourage online donations and put your volunteers to work. If you've had an event canceled, if you will cancel an event, ask your volunteers to call those who participate to allow you to keep their donations for events that are coming up. Ask them to make that gift to your organization as if they had participated with that particular event. Again, part of our discussion as we go through is that this is a situation like no other. We have never been in this particular situation before. Hopefully we will never again. But as you know, high net worth donors indicate that they stopped giving to a charity because they were no longer feeling connected to the organization. This is a time that we will see that. And we'll go to the next one. So take a look at donors who support your nonprofit. They will support if you ask. Please do not forget to ask them to make a gift and continue to make a gift to your organization. You are in a very competitive situation if you are a local or regional nonprofit. There is tremendous need nationally and internationally for funding for what we're dealing with in this pandemic. I am a great advocate and a great follower of a gentleman named Bruce Katz. He is a philosopher, a researcher who has introduced and promoted the concept of the new localism. And in effect, what he says is that local is more impactful. And the organization is based at Drexel University, if you'd like to check it. Bruce has a piece today that says this has to do with saving small businesses, but applies to nonprofit. Supersize your local role. Supersize your ability to respond locally and regionally to the needs of people and clients that you serve. You are, in my opinion, are the most efficient at taking those donor dollars and using them effectively to help your clients, to help your region. The most, in my opinion now, based on what I see, one of the most important organizations for you to partner with is your community foundation or the regional foundation that serves your area. Those that are dealing with rapid response funds, because they are dealing primarily in your geographic area or among your cohort. Rapid relief criteria, remember, you may not fit the particular criteria that are evident in here. For example, providing food for those in need, administering care for our children, serving the elderly who are most vulnerable, helping those suffering from hardship and loss due to COVID-19. Your nonprofit may not be seen or recognized as one that is critical to providing these services. So you need to make your case with a rapid response fund administrator that you are, or be open to a nonprofit and partnering with that nonprofit so that you do a joint ask, what we say in an ask to the rapid release funds for both of you to work together to provide funding so that you can continue. Connect the dots, look at nonprofits with whom you could work and do a joint ask to a donor. Look how you could partner with a nonprofit. Let me give you an example, a site center. A good friend of mine is the CEO at a site center. And a site center might not be seen as one of the critical elements for the Rapid Release Fund, but can the site center partner with another organization that is very evident, a very evident responder to this COVID-19, that they could partner and do a joint ask for Rapid Release Fund funding. Go to where the funding is. Yes, the rapid release funds, the major foundations, and certainly the federal government and the SBA loans. If your legislator, your state or federal legislator, or your state nonprofit organization, like in Pennsylvania, it's PANO, Pennsylvania Association of Nonprofit Organizations, and here in North Carolina, it's a similar organization, are having weekly conference calls. I urge you to go ahead and put that on your schedule and participate in those weekly conference calls. If you're the CEO, you can assign that to your development officer or to a volunteer or to someone within your organization to be part of that. That's where the funding is. They can help you in securing the funding and look for opportunities for you to create that funding. Consider mergers and acquisitions. This is probably the last thing we want to consider, but you need to keep this in mind. That some of the research indicates that, or some of the prognosticators indicate that 30, 40, 50% of our small businesses and our nonprofits will be lost in this pandemic. So is there a way for you to merge with another organization to continue your mission in perpetuity, to look to be open to acquiring another nonprofit, acquiring in the best sense of the word, to look at doing this so that you can continue the mission, continue providing the service that your donors want to consider. So consider this, again, perhaps a little bit longer term, but mergers and acquisitions. The last thing I'd like to say to you is use the power that you have at your disposal. You have power as the CEO or as the development officer to make assignments to your board and to volunteers. Serving on a board of directors on a nonprofit organization is an honor. It is a responsibility. Now is the time for those members to step up, and to say, I can help. And you need to assign them 5 or 10 phone calls to make, assign them responsibility to help you meet influencers, maybe to take these weekly calls. They have responsibilities to your organization. So use them, use the power that you have inherent. It is as important, or perhaps more important today than any other time in your organization's history to do that. Good luck to you. We're welcome to take your questions now.
Thank you, Margie. We did get a couple, and I do want to point out, Margie just mentioned Pano and that several of the other states have local nonprofit organizations. So I know at least in Pennsylvania, Pano is sharing information daily about rapid response funds, how to access them. They're doing several webinars and just doing what they can to make information accessible. So certainly we encourage you to, if you're in Pennsylvania, check out Pano, or if you're in another state, please check out their information and what they have to offer. So we did get a couple of questions. So Margie, how do you suggest someone even begins a conversation with one of their donors?
What I would suggest is that primarily a phone call, unless you know that, I guess I'm of the opinion that phone calls are best. So I would make a phone call to your donor, asking how they are, knowing how they are, their spouse, their partner, their family members are, listening to them, relating to the crisis, understanding that you're sharing information as well. If something is developed that's positive in your community, talk about that. Here in our neighborhood, unrelated to a function of a fundraiser, but something that brought a lot of joy, is that a group of teachers drove through and were waving and honking their horns and saying hello, having signs, we miss you, and be safe, and then singing happy birthday to a 5-year-old. These were teachers from an elementary school. It's an anecdote. It was a lot of fun. There will be an Easter egg hunt in our neighborhood on Easter for people walking up and down the streets here in our neighborhood. So those were just uplifting kinds of things. You acknowledge that there's this difficult situation, especially for all of this, but you emphasize what they're telling you and listen to what they're telling you and respond that way. And then share information about how your organization is responding, what you can do and what you are doing.
Thanks, Margie. So what if someone has an administration or a leadership team that's worried that, making calls or doing outreach might come off as bothering the donors? And so they're sort of already in their mind deciding that the donor is going to be bothered by their outreach. Do you have any advice or suggestions for how to work with a leadership team to get them to think past that?
Yes, research shows us that connecting with donors in times of crisis is one of the first steps that nonprofits should take. This is research-based. This isn't Margie Taylor talking. It really is imperative, and particularly in this situation, we are lonely. We are isolated. This is more important now than at any crisis I've ever worked through. The second point I'd like to make is don't let your own underlying assumptions or fears stop you from making these calls. It takes courage to do what we do any day of the week. It takes a great deal of courage for us to do what we're doing during this pandemic. Find that courage and go ahead and move forward. Third, write a script. Put together talking points so that you're not bumbling all over the place. So work with your leadership team, get your team to put together a script and talking points. Take some time to walk through that. And then fourth, understand that your donors are understanding. We are all going through this together. If you take a misstep, if you're bumbling, they will understand. All right, because none of us is prepared for this. I have found donors to be very forgiving, prior to the pandemic. I think donors will be very forgiving now as well.
Thanks, Margie. And I know we do have a couple of other questions, but I want to be mindful of everyone's time. So we will make sure that we follow up and get responses to all of these questions out to everyone. So again, if you do have any direct questions for Margie, you have her contact information there. And then I did just want to reiterate my point from before. If there's a specific question or you just feel like you'd like some additional time and support, if you want to email me, my email is at the bottom there, Jackie@getstrategy.com. I'd be happy to set up a free 30-minute consultative webinar with one of our team members for you to get some, direct support, feedback, ask questions, whatever it may be. So we can help you think through, who and how you might do some of this donor outreach. We can help think through kind of what's next in managing cash flow or thinking about how you have to course correct how you do your programs or services or even your strategic planning. So there's a lot that we can do virtually. So if you're interested.
And Jackie?
Yeah.
Jackie, too, if for example, the group who wants to work with her administrative team, if she would like us to come in, on a conference call with her team for that 30-minute consult, we can work through identifying talking points, scripting, and rehearsing those conversations. That's an example of what we can do that's very concrete.
No, that's a great point. Thank you, Margie. So again, if you're interested in that, please shoot me an email and I'll be happy to get you set up with one of our consultant team members. And then just like you did today, we've got 2 more free webinars coming up. There's one on Friday that talks about how to move your programs and services into this virtual world. And there's another one scheduled next Wednesday to think through how you might adjust your strategic or operational plan in light of the current situation that we've had. And we've already done 3 additional webinars that you can find the recordings on our website. So if you want additional information on upcoming or past webinars, again, don't hesitate to shoot me an email and we'll be happy to get that information available to you. And we will make sure you all get the slides, the recording of the webinar, and then again, any questions we didn't have time to answer, we'll be sure to get you all those questions and responses as well. So we appreciate you taking the time this morning to sit with us. And I know this was informative, so thank you, Margie, for doing this for us as well.
Thank you and good luck.
All right, thanks everyone. Take care.